And I have a team breaking up that core four at the top, and surprise, surprise, it's the Ottawa Senators. A hell of an offseason. If you had to give an award for best offseason, it would have to go to this hockey team. DeBrincat, Giroux, Tyler Mott, Cam Talbot, Jake Sanderson comes in to make his debut with this team, locking up Tim Stützle and Josh Norris. It's been a huge summer. It's going to be a rough start without Cam Talbot. It'll be a real test for Anton Forsberg, who's in the first year of that 3-year deal at $275 per. Magnus Hellberg, who we don't really know a lot about. They claimed him off waivers from Seattle, is going to be the backup for the first few weeks or so that Talbot is out. But just looking at this team in the top six, and we expect that they are going to add a defenseman at some point, whether that's Jacob Chychrun or someone else. There's definitely a need. Man, the Ottawa Senators look a lot better, and I think that if there's one team to break up the core four at the top of this division, it's them. And so I have them at number 4. What do we think about the Senators' case?
I thought about putting the Sens here, I thought about putting Detroit here, and I thought about putting Boston here, and I had to contemplate on which one I was going to land with. I'll tell you that I didn't land with the Senators, although I could be convinced. Like, it could take a pretty easy argument, honestly, to convince me at this point. I like this team a lot. This top six is now filthy. After having kind of a one-line team, in my opinion, last year, they have a great top six, and then they're kind of rounding out the bottom six as well with, like, Matthew Joseph. That's a great pickup. That's really worked out for them so far. They have 2 guys on their fourth line that, when they were young, had their pain receptors surgically removed so that they don't feel anything, and Parker Kelly and Austin Watson. At least that's the story I heard. I don't know if that's true or not. I think I saw Austin Watson block more shots than every defenseman in the league last year, which blows my mind. So I really love the forward core that they have going on here. And then there's a lot of young guys trying to crack this roster as well. It's the defense for me that didn't have them land in the 4th spot, because there's a lot of questions to be had there. I think Jake Sanderson, he's ready to make a step. I would be happy to see him on this team. But other than that, I really only feel comfortable with one guy on this team, and that's Thomas Chabot. And he's been playing 27 minutes the last few years for that exact reason. I don't think they've really done very much in terms of trying to change this problem on defense. That's really all I have for the Senators. It was the defense that I got hung up on, and that couldn't get them to 4 for me.
So where do you have Ottawa landing then? The 5 spot?
Or they 6? Actually fell to 6.
Okay.
Really? Interesting.
Okay, so Harp, if you had Ottawa at 4 in case you have them at 6, this is perfect because I had them in the 5 spot, so I can be the kind of what's it called? We can agree on number 5. So Ottawa, like legit top 6, like you guys said. They had a really good offseason. I do like their third line as well of how they're skating right now. Tyler Mott, Shane Pinto, and Matthew Joseph. I think they're going to be tough to play against and pretty good too, and pretty responsible. So, Case, the problem for me was the same as you. It was the back end. I think there's too many question marks. Jake Sanderson, for me, a bit of a boomer bust guy, and same with Brandstrom, a bit of a boomer bust guy who signed a 1-year deal, kind of betting on himself. So I don't really know what their back end is going to look like, aside from guys like Chabot and Artem Zub, who was another mainstay last year, and he was pretty good all season. If they did add Jacob Chychrun or a defenseman of similar caliber, I think that would be enough to push them into the number 4 spot for me. But just looking at that back end and looking at their goaltending situation with just Anton Forsberg until mid-November roughly, that's when Cam Talbot comes back, I just don't like their chances. Now, to be fair, for the number 4 and 5 spot, I really did consider swapping the two teams that I had there. I ended up with Ottawa in the 5th spot just because I think it's going to be a race at the start of the season for these two teams to rack up some points and to bank some points. And I just think that, the team that I had in the 4th spot, even though they're a bit banged up, and you're probably answering the question who I have there in that spot, even though they're a bit banged up, I think they're still in a better position than the Sens are without their starting goaltender to start the season. So that's why Ottawa fell to the 5th spot for me. And I think, they're still a bubble playoff team, and they're going to be good for sure. But I just don't think they're quite there yet. They're not quite rounded out. But in the next couple of years, this division is going to be scary with teams like Ottawa, Detroit, and even Buffalo getting better and better.
The last thing I'll say in favor of Ottawa being in that 4th spot instead of the Boston Bruins, of course, like you're alluding to, Chad, is that Ottawa has Thomas Chabot for the first 20 games of the season. It's likely that Boston won't have Charlie McAvoy.
They won't.
And that is a huge thing, I think. Although, to be fair, Boston will have the better goalie tandem to start the season, and Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. But, man, losing McAvoy and Grzelcyk to start the season, that is massive. And, we've heard Elliot Friedman and lots of other hockey guys say this, that if you're out of it by American Thanksgiving in November, it's really tough to get back in it. And so I just think that the start of the season is so crucial for the Boston Bruins, and I think it's going to be a little bit rough, especially without that Norris Trophy caliber defenseman on the back end to start the year, when Ottawa has their top guy to start the season, even though they don't have their starting goaltender. That's my last thing I'll say about Ottawa, and sort of my justification for putting them ahead of Boston.
Well, and you work for the team, so you have to say that now.
I knew that was going to come out at some point.
Yeah.
I just see a team with one top 4 defenseman playing in their top 4, and then I see Boston, who has a couple guys who I would consider top 4 defensemen, and they can also turn a turd into gold there when it comes to defense. So I think that they'll figure it out on the back end. It's other areas that scares me in Boston, and we can get into Boston if you want, because that's the team I had at number 5.
Oh, okay. So we know who you have at 4 then, but let's talk about Boston.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. I have the Montreal Canadiens at number 4. Why are you laughing? No, I do. I have Boston at number 5. I'm telling you, I really debated this number 4 spot. Like, all 3 of the teams could have went number 4 for me, and I think Boston is going to struggle at the beginning of the season. But that later half, I think they're gonna make up a lot of points. I don't know what that means for a playoff spot for them, because it is going to be tough to get in the East, especially when you drop so many points in October and November, like Harp is saying. But I think that I still like this team with what they have. They've got the top 6 is still good without Brad Marchand. I don't think there's any debating that. I'm excited to see what a Czech line can do if they keep those guys together. I obviously was ready for Zacha to leave New Jersey, but at the same time, I like him, and I hope that he's successful in Boston. And then it's just so many role players on this team every single year that really just solidifies this team in my mind as a playoff team, because they always have the guys that know what to do and how to do it and how to get themselves there. I gotta say, I've got a cold right now, and the amount of brain fog that is happening to me this whole episode has been crushing me. I don't know if you've noticed that. So I'm just going to shut up here and let you guys talk about Boston. But you guys have talked about the woos, which are the injuries, but that's where it ends for these guys. This team's banged up to start the season, but after that, I don't have a problem with them. I don't have a problem anywhere up and down the lineup. So the point total is going to take a hit early on, but this team's still so good.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I look at the Bruins and I think their forward group actually got better because it was mostly the same, but they added David Krejci. And this is when everyone's healthy. And adding David Krejci back, even though he played overseas last year, that's a solid pickup for not a lot of money for this team. So they're pumped with that. Plus, I'm sure they're going to have some space to add at the deadline to that forward group or the back end if they need to. So there's that as well. On D, I think it's pretty much the exact same when everyone's healthy. And in net, it is the exact same because both guys are healthy. Marchand, McAvoy, and Grzelcyk, all three of those guys are expected to come back at some point in November. So really, best case scenario, you could be missing those three guys for 1 month of the season. Literally 1 month. I know that's a lot of time in terms of games played, but that's basically all they have to struggle through. They've got to play 1 month of hockey without those guys, and then they've got all season long to claw back. And I think, we can't count the Bruins out for that reason. And like I said, I think the Sens were the other team, in my opinion, who were going to be able to claw for that spot, that fourth spot. And it's going to come down to just who is better prepared to start the season, Ottawa or Boston, or at least that's how it shook out in my head. And to me, because they're only missing a month of the season and they still have a lot of good players. By the way, Taylor Hall is expected to play in game 1 of the regular season, so that's a good thing for them too, because that was a bit of uncertainty there. But I just think they're in a better position than Ottawa to snatch up some points at the beginning of the season, even though it's going to be difficult for both teams to do so. Detroit is an interesting one case, and we can talk about them, but first we have to decide where we're going to rank these teams, because I had Boston at number 4, Harp had Ottawa at number 4, and Case, you have Detroit at number 4, and that is kind of the story of this division, isn't it? Any three of those teams could take that spot, but we have to decide who's taking number 4.
I'm really set on Ottawa being in that 4th spot. I think that missing those 3 guys that we mentioned in Boston is going to really hurt them to start the season, and it's going to be hard to kind of weather the storm early on. So I'm picking Ottawa, but again, I'm open to having my mind changed.
My one thing that honestly I'm willing to knock Boston down with is something that no one's talked about yet, is the departure of Bruce Cassidy, that honestly I think is going to be another hindrance on the early part of this season. Just a new coach, new system. Well, probably not a new system, because why, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I think that's another thing to have them start slow out of the gate. So I don't know. Where do we land?
Well, Harper, where did you have Boston finishing? 5th?
I had Boston right below the Ottawa Senators in 5th.
In Case, you had Ottawa in the 6th spot.
But I'm so willing to move Ottawa up. It doesn't.
Okay, this sounds bad coming from me because this was my ranking, but I think to make everybody happy, the most reasonable ranking of these teams in order is Boston, then Ottawa, then Detroit.
I'm less happy than I would be more happy with Ottawa than Boston than Detroit. Just destroy my rankings, because I was all 3 of them don't care where they land.
Okay, all right, let's do that then. Let's go Ottawa 5. That means I'm moving up a spot. Harp convinced us. Ottawa 4. They're moving up a spot. Harper convinced us that they're going to have a good year. That means they move up 2 in your ranking, Case. Boston, number 5. That means they move down in mine. And Detroit at number 6. Everybody okay with that?
Okay, I'm just going to clip this part where I say that I expect Detroit to be really good, and remember this moment.
They are going to be a lot better, and we'll get to them in a second. The last thing I just wanted to say about the Bruins, kind of as my concern, is this is a great opportunity for some young talent in Boston's organization, something they don't have a lot of, to be a part of this lineup early and really relish an opportunity. A guy like Studnicka, Mark McLaughlin, who did get sent down to Providence, but we expect him to be back up during the season, could be early on in the season during that first month or so with the injuries. Guys like Steen and so on and so forth, but we just don't know what we're going to get out of them. We kind of know what we're going to get out of a guy like Shane Pinto. Even though he was hurt for most of last year, He's looked really good so far, and we know what we're going to get with Ottawa's young talent. We don't really know what's there for Boston. That was my last kind of concern with them.
Final offer, Boston 6.
And rejected. I will say, though, we say this for every episode, we could see 5 playoff teams from the Atlantic. Not that it's likely, but we could.
Yes, absolutely.
2 of those 3 teams that we just talked about really push. So